Behind every great marketing strategy is great marketing data. Let your data lead. Visit the page to learn more.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ad Age Remotely. I'm Janine Poggi, Assistant Managing Editor here at Ad Age. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you also to our sponsor, Salesforce, for helping to make this live stream happen. Today, I'm joined by Jeff Marshall, who earlier this week was elevated to the newly created role of Chief Diversity Officer at Worldwide. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Janine. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
And congrats on the new role. That's very exciting.
But yeah, very exciting. Lots of things have happened. I mean, we've been doing a lot of work on the diversity journey even before this moment. So it's on one hand, it's really good to be recognized and for the work that I've done along with the team for the past couple of years. But excited to see what's next.
Yeah. So before we get started, for those of you watching at home, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them on our social channels and we will try to get to them during the program. And if you like what we're doing here on Ad Age Remotely, please like, share, subscribe, or retweet this post. So Jeff, let's talk about, the significance of creating a specific chief diversity role, a C-suite level role overseeing DE&I initiatives. Why is that title within an agency so important?
Well, it's important for a lot of reasons. And honestly, obviously you're Ad Age, I'm at an ad agency, so we're talking specifically about agencies, but the role is important in any type of company or any type of organization, specifically because one, it signals to everyone in the organization that the company takes the issue of diversity and diversification seriously, that it prioritizes it right alongside the other C-level functions, the CFOs, CMOs, COOs. And so I think that's the first piece. I think the other very important piece is it gives that person in that seat the ability to act as a true accountability partner to everyone in the organization from top to bottom. And so I think those are the areas that a lot of companies are kind of lacking in, and that's why it's important for companies to say, no, we look at this as an issue that extends beyond just talent and is part of our business priorities. And in order to do that, you need to have someone sitting in that function in every meeting throughout the organization.
Why do you think for some agencies it's taken so long to get a role in the C-level, in the C-suite, that's overseeing these initiatives?
There's a couple of reasons. I think one of them is that I think some companies they place the the burden of that role on the HR function, which I think is a mistake. Personally, I think the HR function, first of all, they have a wide area that they're overseeing, but diversity goes beyond talent, right? So, for instance, at we look at it. There's talent, but then there's, business, client, and community that diversity functions have to affect. So I think that's one of the issues. I think there is a little bit of a lack of understanding of what the role is to do. I also think that there's a general lack of understanding of what the responsibility of the role is. I just mentioned that, a person in a chief diversity officer or a CDIO role, whatever whatever the acronym is in your particular organization, their role is really one of a strategic, position and one of influence. It is not necessarily that they are to activate the things that need to happen on the business. And I think that people, there's a little bit of a misconception. I like analogies. I'm a big analogy guy, so forgive me if I used one too many today. But the way I have always positioned it is that as a chief diversity officer or as a head of diversity, equity, and belonging, I am a coach, right? So I'm a coach, but the players play the game. So I can give you the strategy. When you enter onto the court or onto the field, you have to execute. And so in this instance, in the business world, the players are the people who are running the teams in the agencies, right? Like, so if we're saying we need to diversify our talent, the person running the team has to execute on that strategy. I can give you tactics. I can give you strategy and thoughts on how to do it. But at the end of the day, if you don't execute, then we don't achieve what we're trying to achieve. And just like I'm using, again, can carry the sports analogy all the way through, just like what happened in the sports world, if it's football season, if the quarterback is not executing the plays, right, the quarterback is the one who has to part. And so I think that's it's the same thing in this space.
You mentioned some of the acronyms right before the show. We were talking about D, E, and I, and one of the letters missing in that. Can you talk about where B goes in the D, E, and I?
So my title before this, which is really interesting, and I'm saying this because I want people to recognize that my elevation to Chief Diversity Officer was not a response to the summer of 2020. I was the SVP, Head of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging at UM long before that. This was, like I said, this was kind of the culmination of the work I had done beforehand. But we were very intentional about this word belonging, and I actually have I'm going to speak a little bit next week about inclusion and belonging. So again, the best way I can explain it is an analogy. And so sometimes you go to restaurants and a diner, and you order blueberry pancakes, and they put the blueberries on top and they roll off onto the plate and they're there. And to me, that's inclusion, right? If you want a blueberry, you cut the pancake and you're very intentional about picking a blueberry up and taking that bite. Belonging is when they fold those blueberries into the pancake, into the batter, right? So what that does is that actually changes the flavor of the pancake. No matter how you cut it, you're going to experience that flavor every single time. And so belonging is really about making sure that those individuals who you've brought into your place of business, act as an actual part of your ecosystem, not just as a number or a quota that you had to fulfill, but they are a very meaningful part of the flavor of your organization. And so we wanted to make sure that, individuals, no matter what their intersectionality was, no matter what their identity was, when they came into that they knew immediately that it was really important for us that you felt like you belonged, that our culture was our culture before you got there, but that you would have an indelible print that you would leave on our culture that would change it for the better. And so that was our goal.
That's great. Can you talk a little bit about your own personal journey getting to this point, what your career trajectory looked like within the ad world?
It's a really interesting one. So I started at an agency in Philadelphia, Tierney Communications, which is actually it's an IPG agency now. I started there, and I'll be honest, it was, I loved working there. I loved working for the people I worked for. And I mean, to this day, they still act as mentors of mine. And then I moved on to a couple of other agencies. And through that time frame, I actually did media strategy, planning, and buying. And in fact, in Philadelphia, there was a point where I was at an agency and I was a media director, and I was the only Black media director in the entire city. And my team was very diverse. It was, you've seen the studies where they say, if you have diverse leadership, diversity kind of, trickles down naturally. So our team was extremely diverse. It was something that we never really even thought of. It was just it looked like a Benetton ad. So I did that for years, and then I kind of hit a ceiling. And then I called one of those people up that I mentioned that I worked for initially. And my North Star had always been, if I'm going to work for someone else, how do I get to a C-level position? Like, how do I get to a level, in an organization where I can impact the entire organization? And so went to New York, started working on some larger businesses, came over to UM and worked on the Coca-Cola business, and then got really involved in the diversity efforts, because one of the differences that I saw when I came from Philadelphia to New York was I thought that the industry would be much more diverse when I got there. And so what was really surprising was I had taken a level step down to come and work in New York. And I would still get people saying to me in the hallways that I was one of the higher ranking Black men that they had ever met in media planning, which was very surprising to me. And so I got involved in diversity at UM just as a volunteer thing. And a lot of companies do this. They start a council or a committee that is then charged with, diversifying giving a diversity strategy to the agency, which is a valiant effort. But, one thing that I realized was we didn't have anyone who was holding the company accountable. So
we'll start interrupting. A lot of things that we've been, talking about is that a lot of these business resource groups, employee resource groups, whatever you want to call them, no one is paid extra for any of this. So you're not paying the people to actually do this kind of work.
Exactly. And that creates a completely different dynamic. I mean, if you're working on this and it's a passion thing, but a client priority comes up, what do you prioritize? Well, you have to prioritize the client because that's, what you're getting paid to do. And then on top of that, you also, the ERGs don't necessarily hold the authority to actually act on the change. And then lastly, what I think is an interesting issue when you put it specifically on ERGs is you're putting the burden of changing the organization on the very people who need the organization to change. And so it's not, so it actually needs to be a larger collective of people, those who are underrepresented and those who aren't. And so those things are a struggle for a lot of companies. But when I came to the realization, I was a very vocal member of the council, and I came to the realization, and I had a conversation with Lynn Lewis, our CEO, conversation with Deidre Smalls-Landau, our CMO, and with Kate Weiss, who's the head of HR. We had a conversation about it. And I said, we've got some really good irons in the fire, but we're very forgiving when we don't hit a goal because we all know it's kind of our second job. And so what they did was create the role. I said, I think we should create the role. They created it. And then they came back to me, given, my input and my passion over the past couple of years, and asked if I would be interested in it. And for me, it was an opportunity to eventually land here in a C-suite role where I can impact the entire organization. But it also was an opportunity for me to try to get more young Black and Brown and Asian kids into an industry, specifically into media, into a place that had given me a really nice career.
Let's talk about that. I know that's an important initiative, and one that was also announced along with a new role, talking about the new training sessions that UM is doing along with Vox Media. Can you talk a little bit about those and what you're thinking about in terms of recruitment?
Yes. So, I mean, there's a lot that happens in the recruitment space that, especially when you're talking about diverse populations or underrepresented populations, that I think that as an industry, we do wrong. I think one of the first things is we don't really clearly differentiate the different disciplines, and specifically media, right? So when we talk about advertising, we talk about it generally as if the people who are receiving it that aren't in the industry understand that there are multiple different disciplines. And the truth is, myself included, when I was young before I entered into the industry, we young people and people of color who aren't subject to the industry, when they think of advertising, they think specifically of creative functions. So they're not thinking media. They don't know media strategy, planning, or buying, the vast majority of them. And so I think that it's really on us to clearly differentiate the disciplines. And even if you look at all the award shows and things that we have in the industry, a lot of it is focused on the creative space. So how that impacts recruitment is we show up, and now I'm saying we, like a company like UM, a media agency shows up to a school or somewhere, organization, to recruit members in, and diversity is on everyone's mind. And so we recruit a bunch of young, diverse people into the agency. They're thinking in their head, this is a foot in the door because they really want to be in a creative space. So they enter in and they're doing media, something they don't really know about at the entry level. And it's not exactly what they thought they would be doing. Add to that, they look up the ladder. They don't see many faces that look like theirs. A year or two later, they exit the industry as a whole. And that's kind of on us as an industry. Like, we really need to be talking about the different disciplines in a clear fashion. We need to be making people understand that, you know, you don't have to major in advertising to come into advertising. There are roles for people who are math majors, right? We have a data and analytics roles. If you are a researcher, someone who just likes to kind of be behind the scenes, there's research roles. Accountants, there's a bunch of different roles that a lot of, you know, people from underrepresented groups aren't even aware of. And so that's what started, that's where we started at, and where we landed at so far is this partnership with Vox Media, which is a Media 101 certification, which will do exactly that. We want to educate young underrepresented groups about what the industry is, so that they have a better understanding before they land on our doorstep.
And who is that open to? Where can people apply for that?
So the first iteration of it right now is open to a select group of HBCUs and HSIs, Hispanic serving institutions. Once we get through this first iteration, which will be in this particular semester, we're actually going to broaden it. We want to make sure that we're able to scale it. But there'll be a link, and I'll share the link. I'll share the link with you, and people can click to sign up for it. It is free. It does come with a badge for those who like the badge on their LinkedIn or on their resume. And then also the big thing, you know, that we wanted to make sure we were able to offer was an opportunity for these people. If you make your way all the way through it, it's 8 sessions. You make your way all the way through it and you get the certification. You also get invited to a networking function where you're able to meet not only, you know, agency leadership, but also talent acquisition from our agencies. So our sister agencies might be there as well, and Vox Media. And so it's kind of, you know, we're taking, you know, the all ships rise with the tide approach, right? So if we can educate all of these people that go through the certification are not going to land at UM. And we're fine with that, as long as they come into the industry, because that's where we need them.
Well, I definitely want to get your take a little bit more broadly on the progress Madison Avenue has made in diversity and inclusion over the past year. But before we get to that, we have a short message from our sponsor, Salesforce.
Marketing trends can change suddenly. Your marketing strategy should change with it. Let your data lead. Visit the page to learn more.
I'm Janine Poggi, and I'm here with Jeff Marshall, Chief Diversity Officer at UM. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them on our social channels, and we will try to get to them during this program. Thank you to those of you who are tuning in from home. We have Nasia from Dubai, Timothy from Italy, Tuba from Turkey, Inez from Spain, Andre from Indonesia, and Dawn from New Jersey. Thank you so much for tuning in. So, Jeff, as we were discussing, let's talk a little bit about the progress that Madison Avenue has made since the murder of George Floyd. What have you seen as it pertains to diversity and inclusion progress?
If I can be extremely blunt, not a ton, right? Like what I've seen that I think is positive, we are talking about it a lot more. There is a lot of conversation around it. What I would like to see, to be honest, is the action following those conversations. And so there are some actions. So I don't want to, seem extremely, grim, but or bleak. But some actions that I've seen is, for instance, the 4As has been very vocal in this space and making sure that it is prioritized amongst the agencies that belong to that organization. So I think that is one of the things. I've seen a lot of people enter into roles similar to this one, the Chief Diversity Officer role. So that is a good thing. What I want to make sure that I offer to those who are entering into these roles, there's a certain level of need that you'll have enter into a role like this, right? It has to have some authority with the role. It has to. You have to also interview the organization and make sure that they are serious about the journey. And the hope is that they've been on the journey for some time before you join, because it's really hard to get that momentum going. But the thing that is interesting, another reason that some of the progress has been slow, is because of this kind of the great resignation that's happening. And so we've got large swaths of people. Forget the fact that there's a group of underrepresented in there, but large swaths of people who are exiting, the work world. And so that affects our industry too. And so we're at the same time as trying to diversify the industry facing this talent, crisis, so to speak, where people are exiting. And so I think it's really important to kind of dig into why people are exiting, because that's going to actually help you recruit them. And a lot of people are exiting corporate America, but specifically the ad industry, because they're finding, that what the pandemic has done for a lot of people is given them a space to reflect on their purpose. And so we have to really think, how can we add to their lives? How can we think, like, what really matters to the people we want to bring into our industry? And I think a really important part with that, especially from an ad agency standpoint, we target such a diverse group of people for our clients' products, and we're always talking about understanding what their passions are, right? And so we're probably, we're brilliant when it comes to that as an industry. So if we just really consider this group of people that we want to recruit as a target, and put that same brilliance that we put towards client work towards this, we can actually I think that you can actually fix the problem. So I think we can, I think that that's where the opportunities lie.
How about retaining talent, especially, people of color? What needs to happen, especially in those elements of belonging? What are some steps that agencies can take? What are some of the things that you're thinking about internally to help with that?
So belonging is, it's a feeling that, the individual has to have. Like, you can't impart it on them. You can kind of open the space for them to have that feeling. One of the things that we do at and we started it right at the beginning of the pandemic, we have an internal campaign that we call Uniquely Me, and it also shows on our social channels. So, I would encourage everyone to go take a look at those. Uniquely Me, what we've done with that is it always features employees of ours, or coworkers, or partners, people who are working within our four walls. And it gives us a space to really talk about what makes them unique, talk about their culture, the differences. And so we've done that for more than a year now. We've also shared it on our social channels. But what it does is it does two things for someone like me, right? So a Black male looking at, let's say, an Indian woman who is participating in our Uniquely Me, it humanizes, not only her, but also some of the issues she might be facing for me, because we're different from each other. So it does that. And then the second thing it does is other people in the office that identify with her, they see themselves. And it really makes, I love that one too. That's Pratt. So it allows us to really, really get some space to talk about who we are outside of what we're doing on a daily basis. And so to me, that's one of the things that is key to making people belong. And I think that making people feel that they belong is really the key to recruitment, right? Like, if I really love the place that I work at, I have no problem saying to friends or associates or people I know, like, hey, come work here. So it's a recruitment tool. And the way I put it, analogies, I love them. So the way I put it, and I just put it like this in the last conversation I had was, when you have a party at your house, you clean the house before you invite the people in, right? Because no one wants to come to your party and help you vacuum. No one wants to do that. They just want to come enjoy the party. And if they come and you haven't cleaned up, they're probably going to leave sooner than you expect. And so you have to do that part. And belonging is a large part of cleaning your own house. So you have to do that first. I think that's a key to it.
You talked about how really over the past year or so, the thing that you've seen happen the most is really the talking, the conversations. How do you think the industry turns these conversations into action?
So the one thing that has the one thing that has to happen is, first of all, and this is happening, when companies talk, what we found is the public now is watching closely, and they're saying, oh yeah, but did you do this? You said a year ago you would do XYZ. And then we have organizations like 4As who yield a tremendous amount of influence on the industry. They too are trying to get into position where they can help hold agencies accountable. And then there just needs to be a lot more transparency. That's the other part of this. Because what happens is some companies are just looking at numbers, and they're beholden to these numbers. And so what they do to increase their numbers is they basically are poaching from other agencies. And so, yeah, so your diversity numbers look fine, but we're still at the same 5% overall that we've been at for the last 20 something years. And so it really has to be, I think the action for the industry is to stop hiding things and holding things so close to the vest, and start sharing openly, like, hey, what are some strategies that we need to do as a group to get more people into the industry? And so I think that is the action that I think needs to happen. And I think you have to put pressure. There needs to be pressure applied from different spaces, right? Clients, they need to apply pressure. One thing we do know is what clients say to do, agencies do. So if clients are really caring about diversity, make that a priority to your agencies. But at the same time, give the agencies the ability to act on that diversity. And the reason I say that is, you have staffing plans and things like that. There's all these other business levers that are being pulled. And so the only ones who can control some of those levers are at the client level. And so we could use help from them as well. So I think there's a number of different actions that can be taken.
And we can't have a conversation without talking about COVID's impact in all of this. I'm thinking about, as agencies return to the office, the hybrid models that are taking shape. How are you thinking about making sure inclusivity is a part of the hybrid work model? With some people working from home, others in the office, there certainly seems to be a chance that some people will feel left out. So how are you looking at that, especially in terms of inclusivity?
Yeah, I think the number one thing, and this will permeate everything that we've talked about, but it's really crucial to listen to your employees, because quite frankly, one of the benefits for the African American or Black population, has been they don't have to undergo some of the daily microaggressions. And I mean, I'm sure it's for other impacted populations as well, but the daily microaggressions that you go through being in an office. Right. So really, listen to them and see, like, do you want to be back in the office space first? And if not, why not? And how can we make it so that you might want to be, in the office space? So there was a bit of a benefit that came with COVID. But with the hybrid workspace, I think it's really important. This is going to be a really tricky area to navigate, because the one thing that COVID did was, in a meeting space, it put everyone on level playing field, right? So, everyone was, you had the same amount, the same little square box, across the screen. Everyone had the same screen space, the same, opportunity to talk if they wanted to cut in, if they did not want to. And now what's going to happen in the hybrid world is those who are physically in the room, they may end up getting more opportunity to contribute than those who are, what we might perceive as at a distance, because they're still doing the commuting via computer. So I think that we have to make ways for those people who are not physically in the space to contribute, and then we have to be conscious about amplifying when they do contribute. Because usually what happens is there's this, immediacy, like someone's right here, I can ask them to do a project. And so what we always have to ask, and especially in the hybrid work world, is who is not in the room and whose voice have we not heard from? And I think that's going to be key to helping us figure out this hybrid, work world that we're all definitely going to be in. So
yeah, a great question to ask for sure, for probably even more than the hybrid work world. So thank you, Jeff. Thanks for being on. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Janine.
Thank you to our sponsors, Salesforce. And as always, thank you to our Ad Age crew, Alfred Mascaroni, Anna Sakula, and Arabella Breck for making this live stream happen. We have a great slate of marketing, agency, media, and tech leaders joining us on remotely over the next couple of weeks. Check out adage.com/remotely for updates. Thanks for watching.